Hello, Namaskar. This is Neelam Mansingh from Chandigarh. The topic that I decided to speak on was navigating space, performance making. Today, that whole term has become so powerful and has so many different connotations and so many different interpretations that it can boggle the mind. Today, when we talk about navigating space, we're actually navigating even our lives. When we practice social distancing, physical distancing, and as we all know, theatre is a space of intimacy. It is a space of touch, of contact. It's a space of smell. It's a space of breathing in and breathing out, where a group of people come together as a collective and participate and interact with each other. Now, after the COVID, how will the whole thing change? There are going to be enormous changes. But I think those changes can be seen as challenges rather than impediments or limitations. We do not know, we can only conjecture. There could be some hypotheses that one can build on, but those will be abstract constructions which have no meaning in the present moment. It is only through trial and error, it is only through experimentation that we will figure out and understand what kind of new spaces evolve in this new changing health and physical environment which we may inhabit 6 months or 5 months or 1 year from now. I think theatre will never die. Theatre will always be a very powerful expression of human interaction. Because what theatre offers and what the performance arts offer is so special. It is that special energy that passes by what the actor is experiencing and emoting on the stage with a live audience, that invisible thread which he unleashes and binds a separate group of people in one cohesive collective entity. What is that invisible thread? What is that sutra? That sutra which binds people coming from different social, political, emotional, intellectual backgrounds into one cohesive whole is the magic that makes us gravitate towards theatre despite all the odds, despite all the limitations, despite all the hardships. My journey in theatre has been really a series of accidents. I was born and brought up in Amritsar. I came from a middle-class family where theatre could be seen as a hobby, but never as a profession. By accident, I met Ibrahim Al-Qazi, who was the director of the National School of Drama at that time. I was a student in Chandigarh, and I started doing some theatre at the university, not because I had some great burning passion for the arts. It was to make life more interesting. Because in the university, when you're I was doing a course in art history under a wonderful teacher who was heading the department called Dr. B.N. Goswami. Working with him and being a student at the university meant that I was occupied for 2 hours or 3 hours of the day. So to make life more interesting and to get away from that boredom of not knowing what to do with the rest of the day, I decided to join the University Theatre Club, as they called it in those days. And we did plays like Antigone, and we did plays like The Maids by Jean Genet, Jean Ennui. We did a play called Gagan Mein Thal. So somewhere I liked the whole smell and the whole feeling and the whole energy that theatre seems to suggest. But I had no idea about the contours of the business. Till I met Ibrahim Al-Qazi. He came to Chandigarh. He brought 2 plays from the National School of Drama, Jasma Oden, which was done by Shanta Gandhi, and another play called Othello by Shakespeare, which we all are well versed with. And I remember Manohar Singh, the legendary actor, was doing the role of Othello, and M.K. Raina was doing the role of Iago. And I was so mesmerized and so overwhelmed by the intellectual rigor, by the visual language, by the whole professionalism of it. Because I always thought the arts was that you had a feeling and you had an emotion and you found a space and you went for it. I never thought that theatre was also taught, that theatre was also a technique. And then I understood that when we call the artist, the Shilpakar, he's a craftsman. So craft is a very essential part, or technique as we call it, a very essential part of the whole training of what it means to be an actor. Because talent is like raw material. It has to be chiseled, it has to be refined, it has to be made to grow. And that can only be done in a professional environment. And I was very fortunate that I had a master like Ibrahim Al-Qazi who taught us about detailing, about characterization, and told us that art is hard. And it is not a hobby. It is a profession which has to be taken as seriously as if you wish to be a doctor or a lawyer. And then much later when I read Anne Bogart, the wonderful teacher who teaches in the University of Columbia, where she said the 3 things you need to be an artist. You need passion, एक जुनून होना चाहिए, you must have a story to tell, कुछ कहने के लिए आपके पास कुछ होना चाहिए, या the urge to share, to connect, to communicate, and you must have technique. So technique becomes a very essential dimension that gives a certain structure to your passion and also to your storytelling techniques. We are always telling stories, how we sit, how we eat, how we interact with people, what we say, how we dress. We're all telling a story. How we live, the aesthetics that we choose to surround ourselves by, they all tell a story. And how the stories are transformed and translate into a performance space is what I would like to share with you. After my 3 years at the National School of Drama, I went and worked in Bhopal. It was all some wonderful, what you would say, wonderful twists and turns of destiny. My husband had got a posting in Bhopal, and that is the time Bharat Bhavan was coming up, which is a multi-arts complex, where B.V. Karanth was invited to look after the Hindi repertory company, which was being set up in Bharat Bhavan, which was called the Rang Mandal. And I was offered a job in the Rang Mandal, and it was really a life-altering experience for me to have had the good fortune to experience and to understand the working processes of 2 masters, a master like Al-Qazi Sahab and on the other hand B.V. Karanth, who came from the Gubbi Theatre Company from Karnataka, learnt the Yakshagana, learnt music from Omkarnath Thakur, I remember Karanji telling me कि मैं national struggle में तो हिस्सा ले नहीं सका. So मैंने कहा, what should I do to feel that I want to participate in the whole spirit of nationalism? This is the time when we were talking about freedom and about India becoming independent. He said, मैंने सोचा मैं हिंदी सीखूंगा. So for that, he went to the Banaras Hindu University and learned how to speak, write, and did a master's in Hindi. Then after that, he went and joined the National School of Drama, also was a student of Al-Qazi. So we shared a common platform of being taught by an iconic teacher like Al-Qazi. So to come back, Bharat Bhavan was a very important experience for me. I worked with Karanji for 4.5 years and had an association with him that lasted till the time he died in 2002. When I came to Chandigarh, I set up my own theatre company called The Company. And I do know that I was convinced that whatever work I do, which was something I learned by my experience of working with B.V. Karanth, was that whatever work you do, it must have local moorings. It must be vernacular in sensibility. And it must be regional. So these 3 dimensions became very integral to my whole sense of playmaking, of creating a performance. It had to be vernacular, it had to be regional, and it had to be local. So I cobbled together a group of actors, and what is interesting is I had a group of actors, musicians who came from the Nakal tradition, and I had actors who came from drama departments and drama schools, or who had worked with local amateur groups in Chandigarh, and we put a company together, and it was a very interesting dynamics to see how two separate groups of people coming from different worlds, economic, social, educational, even in terms of training, could make a play together. What is this? What is this combustion? What is this? What is this commingling that produces a certain kind of work? Now, when I worked with the folk artists, the nakals, nakal comes from the Persian word to imitate, who are funsters. They ad lib. They can improvise. They do productions which seem to disturb any notions that you may have or what is a play and what is not a play. Now, for example, when I followed their work and I saw that during Ram Leela, the female impersonators would dance and in Ravan ke darbar and say Jhumka gira re Ravan ke darbar mein. So it was very interesting to see this commingling of pan-Indian myths combined with local myths, transformed and renewed for local meaning. The gods that they evoked rode bicycles, aspired for a Maruti 800, and also sweated profusely. When Sohini travels on the matka to meet Mehwal, the matka becomes also a character, animates itself and says, I'm kacha, but that's the way the playwright has written the play. So Sohini says, I know you're kacha, I'm going to sit on you, and when we go down the river, you're going to melt and dissolve in the water, and I'm going to drown. But if that's the way the story is going to unfold, let's go for it. And I thought to myself, these are such sophisticated techniques of performance making. This is what Bertolt Brecht talked about. This is what the Greek theatre was talking about, where right in the beginning, the chorus announces that the hero is going to die. So already you know the end before the play unfolds. And to see in a starlit night, thousands and thousands of people sitting together, watching a performance, where something precious and something really meaningful and exciting was being exchanged, suddenly dissolved all my sense of what theatre should be or should not be, what is theatre and what is not theatre, suddenly was thrown into the garbage can. Because I did theatre in the 70s, early 80s was when I entered into a so-called semi-professional space where we sat in proscenium theatres, sitting next to strangers, not exchanging a word, not even looking at them, and suddenly to see a play where the actors invade your space and you can invade their space seemed like all lines, as Puck said, the lines have dissolved. Seemed like a very exciting new theatrical form to explore. And it was a grammar and a vocabulary which was not evident in the realistic theatre performances that I had been exposed to or I had seen during my times as a student in drama schools and even otherwise. So this in a certain way twisted something in my own mind. And when I set up my own company, initially I did what you would call a well-made play. I took plays of Ibsen and Lorca, and I did Girish Karnad's Nagamandala, which is very special to my heart. We did that 3 times on the behest of Girish Karnad. But I found that maybe it was something intuitive, that every time I did Nagamandala, I sort of tossed the script around. Even when I did a classical play, I brought it to the now, because I feel that theatre belongs to the now, it belongs to the present. Even though each play, especially a classical play, carries within it the baggage of the time in which it was written, I made it travel. I made it travel culturally, geographically, language-wise, and through that whole process made the play my own. Because I really believed that, I really do believe, and this may not go down very well with playwrights, that once a play is written and comes in the public domain, it transforms itself from a literary text into a performative text. And that performative text belongs to the director. Because we all know that the same play done by 4 directors will be done differently. There is no single way of doing a play. Just like there is no single interpretation, there is not also a single response. So, to come back, in the beginning I was doing what you would call a well-made play, but somewhere in the, I would say in the early 2000s, I suddenly started feeling restless and wanted to challenge myself. I wanted to, I sort of intuitively rejected what you would call the well-made play. This is not a judgment. It is just a preference that I had. So I started taking an idea and developing that idea, and I would like to also interrupt the flow of my thoughts and tell you that I work with one of the leading poets in Punjab called Surjit Patar, and we've had a wonderful collaboration for so many years. So I give him a certain thought and idea, and how he transforms, translates, structures, and makes it into a living entity is the miracle of working with a man of such an incredible genius. And then I worked with B.V. Karanth for 22 years, and how he could translate the words of a poet into such wonderful musical lyrics and such wonderful musical scores. So then I started doing plays which became more collaborative. I started occupying, the word director, as we know, at least for me, has a resonance which is very, which has to do with control, which has to do with masculinity, which has to do with authority. But suddenly I wanted the play to belong to me and the actors and the designers and the musicians. So authorship was distributed. So the whole process that I started working on was based on improvisation, where a certain idea, a seed of an idea, I do come slightly empty into a rehearsal space, but within that emptiness, there's a urge that I want to talk about certain issues, certain things, not as an activist, but as a creative artist. So, whether it's about gender, whether it's about lost homelands, whether it is about migration, whether it is about deforestation, whatever I'm concerned about at that point. And we discuss and we talk, and so the idea is planted to the students. And like I'll tell them, the last play I did was called Gum Hai, which has a certain text. It was based on a text, an Aboriginal text called The 7 Stages of Grieving. And I tell the actors that what does protest mean to you? How would you manifest protest? Which is an abstract idea. Protest is it's not definitive. It could be protest about khana acha nahi, bistar acha nahi, kamra acha nahi, pankha achhi tarah nahi chal raha. Or it can also be something more noble and more national and more political or more social. So you deal with certain ideas. What does protest mean to you? What does loss mean to you? What does gender mean to you? What does equality mean to you? So through a process of releasing an idea into a rehearsal space, the actor then comes up, unlocks his own imagination in ways which I think he surprises himself. As Brecht would say, surprised by the familiar, that he surprises himself. So we've had some really wonderful kind of results that have been pulled out through this kind of exercise, where sometimes the trigger that I give the actor, what he produces is far removed from what I had imagined. Sometimes it comes very much like a blueprint to what I had thought I wish to plan in the play. And sometimes I'm surprised by the unexpected, surprised by the unfamiliar. So then the whole question of weaving and stitching and making a performance takes a long time. we may imagine that this kind of working is much more freer, but it really isn't, because you have nothing to hold on to. You have no text to hold on to. You never know when the moment, you never know what the starting point is, you never know what the ending point is. All this is an entire process of churning, chiseling, hammering, rejecting, uncertainty. It's all about uncertainty. But in a certain way, through this process, I feel a true and meaningful dialogue happens between the director and the actors. This does not mean that the actor's function is different from mine, or my function as a director is dissolved into nothingness. I think we all recognize the space which is because we do know that the actors are the real arbiters of the stage. They are the masters of the stage. They are the ones through whose body, voice, emotion, the ideas will be made manifest. So I find this the new way of working, which I do, and I'm sure a lot of other directors also work in a similar way. And because I do feel that a rehearsal space is not about control. It's not about authority. It's about a group of people coming together, breathing, responding. It's about being intuitive. It's about being instinctive. It's about trusting the absurd, the illogical, and making it work. I don't know what kind of time I have, and I can see a couple of things that are coming down. Yeah. Yes, I think this is very true. It's a critical time for Chakresh Kumar. Thank you very much. I think we have really been failed by our funding bodies, by our funding agencies, by the academies, by the Ministry of Culture. There's been absolutely nothing that has been done for the artist. The artist, I know there's so many causes today. There's about, when you see the sight which will haunt us forever and will definitely somewhere translate into the work that we make, is the image of thousands of people, workers, going home, hungry, exhausted, swollen feet, swollen hearts. It's an image that will haunt us forever. In the same way, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she was saying how many lawyers are starving. So I think every profession has been hit, whether it's the restaurant business, whether it is the construction business, whether it is the entertainment business. But I am only, at the moment, I'm concerned about this very large picture. But my immediate connection is with my fellow artist. I think that they are, they are also like daily wage earners. They work in the morning and they eat in the evening, whether they do street plays or they do performances, because theatre, as we know, when we make the choice, is a profession fraught with uncertainty. It's fraught with financial stress, whether it is a young person trying to run a company or someone who's run a company for 35 years like I have. I think our situation is quite the same. Money is always a stress point. And at that point, for the government, which has a Ministry of Culture, there is a Ministry of Culture which has been set up for moments like this, and not to hear the voice of the artists, the folk artists, the traditional artists, the city artists, the urban artists, I think it is really, really disturbing. No matter what kind of voice you know how loud your voice may be, it doesn't seem to reach anywhere. It's like singing in the wilderness. There's nobody listening, there's nobody hearing. So these are very deeply deep areas of concern. I mean, how much can an individual keep on collecting money? It's a very exhausting task. It's not easy. People's funds also dry up. So I think this is definitely something which needs to be taken cognition of. I don't know if anyone from the ministry would ever listen to a talk which I'm giving, and Though I do believe that no matter how savage the times may be, we must never lose hope. Because theatre offers us, in these segregated times, a space for being a collective, for being together. And I think that is a very significant dimension of why people choose to be in a space like theatre, because it's about community. It is about helping you to take decisions in life. It's about focus. It's about concentration. And I think the young groups that we have in the city, they're doing fantastic work. And why I say it's fantastic, not only in the city, but whether it's in Calcutta or Bombay or Bathinda or Moga, all over. Why I feel it's fantastic is because they are uniting a group of young people, exposing them to a world of ideas, keeping them off the streets, the giddy route, or from drugs or from drinking, and putting them in a world where they can express, where they can communicate, where they can share stories. So I think it's really unfortunate, and I can only commiserate and say that we are all part of this stress, and let's hope we can stand united and manage this monolithic, unknown, invisible power, which is the Minister of Culture. Let me see, I can see some other... Oh, thank you so much, Payal Trivedi. I have done Nagamandala 3 times. I've done Nagamandala 3 times, and it was the first time I did it, and I must say it was in '89, when it had not even been published. I wrote to Girish Karnad. He was a very good friend of B.V. Karanth. So I'd met him, but I had not done any work of any consequence. I wrote to him and I introduced myself and I said, I would really love to do your play. And I must say that man and his generosity and his belief and his faith was so overwhelmingly special that he sent me a handwritten script of Nagamandala in English. And of course, Pataji translated it. And then Girish Karnad and B.V. Karanth arranged an entire tour of Karnataka, where we performed in Bangalore, Mysore, Hedagu, Udupi, Ninasan, the famous theatre of I've forgotten the name. I have the name, but it's rolling in my head. And what was so exciting for me was that in the book that he published for the first time of Nagamandala, the pictures on the cover were from my play. So then in 2004, he asked me if I could revive Nagamandala. There is no such thing as a revival in theatre. Theatre is in the now. It's born today, it dies at night. I don't think you can revive a play. There can't be a retrospective of theatre, because the whole language of performance changes so fast. The vocabulary, the emotional thrust of the actor, the inner choreography of the soul and the spirit. It changes in a way which is so quick and so fast that one has to keep on sorry, I got a little placard from the organizers, so I went off somewhere. In 2004, I had to rethink. I told Girishji if I could look at the play again, because I wanted to know if the play still spoke to me. And I was amazed, because it is one of the most incredible play written in Indian playwriting, where the abstract, the illusionary, the real, they mix and they overlap in a celebration of so many elements that what we think or what we imagine, why should that be less real than the fact that I'm talking to you? Moments of love, moments of happiness, do they really happen or do we imagine them? So this whole, imagine having a chorus of flames. What happens when the light switches off? What happens? Where does the light go? Such an abstract, metaphysical kind of question. And because I worked with the Nakals, which has a very strong element of the female impersonator, I know there's a question where somebody wishes me to talk a little more about the Nikals, which I will do in half a minute. So in 2004, I did the play again, reworking it, rechanging it. Initially, he's given two endings to Nagamandala, which is again a very Brechtian thing. One is, and you can choose as a playwright which ending, as a director, which ending you want to use. You can also decide if you want to use both the endings. I chose one of the more tragic ending, where the snake dies. The snake is, as you know, is the metaphor in the play. The snake, as you know, also represents desire. It represents awakening. It represents Adam and Eve. It's got, the snake has so many meanings and so many different cultural mythologies. So I explored all of them to create this whole sense of what the snake image really means in this play, Nagamandala. So I think it worked very well the second time as well, and Girishji was obviously quite happy with the new production. And it becomes very difficult because, most of the cast was the same, the music was the same, it was designed by B.V. Karanth. Some of the cast had changed, but I had to recast the music, I had to recast some of the images and the movements and make it afresh. Then in 2014, he once again asked me to do Nagamandala, 10 years later. Now by this time, I'd also grown 10 years older. I was a little more irreverent towards the script. My actors had become older, so I could not show Rani as a sweet little young coy bride. I had to show her, I had to interpret her differently according to the age and according to her alertness to what it means to be a woman who's looking forward to her wedding bed. So, and every time I did Nagamandala, I discovered new things. This is what makes a classical play, that it lends itself to multiple interpretations at multiple times in your life. Now, I saw another question which is about there was something about more about the Nikals. When I started working with the Nikals, there's a little backstory to it. When I worked in Bharat Bhavan with B.V. Karanth, at that time there was a lot of talk about finding your own way of training actors. Because most drama schools that existed, including the Fountainhead School, National School of Drama, most of the methods of training were based on Stanislavski. It was based on speech, it was based on detailing, it was based on characterization, very important tools of training, nevertheless. But they felt that they wanted to find a system that was more suited to the Indian body. I think it started somewhere by the Sangeet Natak Akademi, which started this whole concept of theatre of roots by Dr. Suresh Avasthi, where a certain amount of money was given to certain groups and they were told that, why don't you work with your local folk traditions and do a play? Now, money can be a problematic thing, because when you have a grant which seems to have certain conditions, then a lot of very spurious notions of what is tradition, what does the past mean, what does the present mean, come into play. And there is, and also I was very conscious that if I start working with the traditional form, it shouldn't be because of exotica. It shouldn't be used as a leitmotif. It has to be organic, it has to be internal, it has to be dovetailed in a manner where, what does it mean to be a rural actor, what does it mean to be an urban actor? It's really two groups of people bringing different skills and trying to coalesce those skills together, एक मिश्रण करना जिसमें एक दूसरे के जो ट्रेनिंग प्रोसेसेस है creates a third kind of way of working. It creates a third way of working. Now, these ideas, everybody uses, ideas are dime a dozen. You can work with a master like B.V. Karanth, which I did. But when I come and do my own work, then I have to find my own language. I have to find my own way of working. I can't be a copy of a copy of a copy. So when we were in Bharat Bhavan, as you know, Madhya Pradesh has a very rich folk tradition. So we were working with master performers and actors who were members of the repertory, the Rang Mandal, which was organized in Bharat Bhavan in Bhopal. वहाँ हमने देखा कि जो भी एक्टर्स आए थे वहाँ, कोई बीना से, कोई गुना से, छिंदवाड़ा से, they didn't come from drama schools, they didn't come from the NST, they were all people जिन्होंने कुछ local theatre किया था. जब उन्होंने वहाँ रंगमंडल में they were selected for the repertory, they were very stiff, you know, they were naturally very self-conscious like we all are when we join drama school. हमने देखा that the moment you put them in touch with the master performer, say the Natya tradition or the Rai Baredi tradition, Madhya Pradesh में तो भंडार है. It's such a rich kind of tradition of folk performances. The moment you put these two together, suddenly the actor who was so stiff, his body opened up. He could move, he could express, because all the blocks that he had within him, the blocks which we thought were of the body, but they are actually blocks of the imagination. The moment you unlock the body, you unlock the imagination. When we teach in drama school students how to do yoga, how to do kalari, how to do Kuriyatam, how to do Kathakali, it is not to make them into Kathakali artists or to make them into Kuriyatam artists, but how to understand and control their body in such a way that by controlling their body, they also unleash or release their blocked emotions. So I think I loved that experiment. I loved that exploration. We started doing these programs called Purva Rang, जहाँ रोज शाम को दर्शक आते थे, and they could see what the actors had done, because जैसे नाट्य शास्त्र में लिखा है कि पूर्व रंग भी दर्शकों के सामने होना चाहिए. That even the training and the practice of an actor should be done before an audience. It's not a private space. The moment you become a performer, you've already entered into a public space, which is the space of your co-actors, your directors, your designers, whoever is there in the initial stages. So when I came to Chandigarh, I wanted to somewhere explore the same possibilities. And I used to be very, I've said this before on another platform, but I'd like to repeat it. I used to always feel very disturbed when I used to see Hindi films and I would see Punjabi spoken in a funny language. I'm talking about the 80s. I'm even talking about the 90s. Now, of course, Singh is King, and you have Kesari, and you have Akshay Kumar, you know, doing all kinds of, you know, where the Sardar has become a very valid component of Hindi cinema. But during the 80s, the Sikh was never the lover, he was never the hero, he was always the truck driver. And I thought to myself, I've heard such beautiful Gurmukhis being spoken in my own home. The entire Guru Granth Sahib is spoken in Punjabi. Your entire Sufiana Kalam. Then you have such wonderful poets, you know, rather than go into long history of Bhai Veer Singh and all that. Look at Surjit Patar, Pash, Shiv Kumar Batalvi, and many more, Chandan, you know. Itne hamare zabardast Punjabi ke kavi hain. Why has this image distortion or language distortion taken place? And then, you know, this whole balle balle culture that we laugh about and talk about, I wanted to actually work in the Punjabi language. And in that whole process, I did Rashomon with the Department of Indian Theatre, Kurosawa's film, where I used the whole martial arts tradition of the Gatka, of the Nihangs. So I was also, you know, coming back to Punjab after so many years, for me it was also a journey into my own language, into my own, what you would call, my own regionalism. Because language is not only words, it's not only sound, it's cultural history, it's imagery, it's idiom, it is emotion, it is smell, it's hundreds of little things that make language. It's your politics, it's your humor, it's your gali karna, you know. So language is a very integral part. In the moment you do a Lorca play in Punjabi, वो Lorca बन जाता है Punjabi playwright. I mean, look at what Vishal Bhardwaj has done with Shakespeare's Makbul, Heather. I mean, he's just made them so local, so regional, so vernacular. So, you know, in that whole process, I started working with the Nakals. And what I found very interesting was the dimension of the female impersonator. In a certain way, working with female impersonators made me re-look at gender on the stage. What does it mean to be a woman on stage? What does it mean to be a man on the stage? Is gender a performative construct, or is it biology? So, I'm so sorry. I don't know how a phone came inside. We were supposed to lock the phone. Are you still there, or have I disappeared? Acha, kitchen ka tha. Okay. You know, my grandparents lived in a gurdwara. They lived in, we had a big gurdwara in Rawalpindi, which after the division of the country was naturally left behind. So compensatory land was given to my grandparents in Chandigarh. So we had a gurdwara, and also, how do I get rid of this? Should I switch off the sound? I'm so sorry, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not technologically very smart. So I have always been very fascinated by this whole thing of collective cooking, because the langar concept is so essential to the Sikh religion. And being a Sikh, I have spent every holiday was going to the Golden Temple and doing seva and making aate ke balls and gunwing, and then the Gurdwara in Chandigarh, where we slept in the Gurdwara, and subah subah utھ ke aata gunna, dal chhonkna, roti banana, parosna. So that whole, and you know, it was, you know, women sharing stories, the community feeling that is generated in a kitchen. So I wanted to do a play about food and women. So I asked Surjit Pathak that let's do a play about food and women. He said, what is the script? I said, the script is basically it's set in a kitchen, and I want the play to have the smell of coriander, you know, the sense of peace, atta piesna, chonkna. And he said, well, then I need a karchi rather than a pen to write the play. Anyway, in that whole dialogue that we were having, I started reading text. So I came across this wonderful play by Laura Esquivel called Like Water for Chocolate, and another one by Isabel Allende called Aphrodite. So I took those texts and I gave it to him, underlined it, took certain portion, because both these plays are so much connected with what you would call Latin America, and about the whole sense of a woman's place in the you know, the dynamics of a patriarchal system or a matriarchal system. So they were very much located in their own regional cultural history. So how you make it travel, how you transform it, how it translate it became quite an exciting journey. So we had this whole kitchen which we set up, and what is interesting is B.V. Karanth did all the musical compositions, and he used all the sounds of the kitchen, the pisna, the pitna, the chakki, the chutney banana, the chonkna, of course along with the tabla and the tumbi and other musical instruments. And I remember people saying that, did you have cooks, because the jalebis were being made and pakoras were being made and they were distributed to the audience. And what is interesting is that all the songs were recipes. They were all recipes of how to make pakoras, but it also went into Rab da Naam and Pyar Nal Banai, you know, everything has to be made with love and how much you put it. So, you know, recipes in a very kind of jaunty, musical kind of way were written by Patarji. So we had 10 gas cylinders on the stage, and all the actors are cooking, stories are being shared, and it is a story of this one woman who talks about many issues. You know, I won't go into that, but it was a very interesting play. It showed me the possibilities of the stage, where you can have a show in Germany and in Japan and all over the world, using 10 gas cylinders, where food is cooked, where food is served, where the actors, where the audience are not passive participants but become active participants in the whole development of the show. So Kitchen Katha was really quite a daring, and I don't know, maybe I was younger, so I took those kind of risks. I wonder if I would be able to do a Kitchen Katha today. Let me see some more questions. Rashomon performed on stage, yes. Now tell me, any more questions? I can't see some of the... Since the last couple of years, I've been very fascinated by working with Siddharth Hassan Monto. I think he's one of the greatest short story writers that I have read. Whatever he said during the time of the division of the country is as relevant at this moment as it was then. He was a humanist. He plumbed the depth of human misery and human savagery in a manner which I think no other short story writer has been able to do. And what I find so fascinating is that no matter how hard the times, no matter how terrible the times he talked about, he never forgot the essential humanity of human nature. He managed to pull that out no matter how brutal the times that he talked about. And the very fact that he wrote them already showed that there was affirmation no matter how bleak the times may have. Kitchen Katha script. Just send me an email, I'll send it to you. Sameer Munshi, I'm very happy to send you the script of Kitchen Katha. I have it in Devanagari, so I'm happy to send it if you so wish. And it would be great if other people can also perform it. Sometimes I want to do Kitchen Katha again, but in a kind of different manner. Of course, cooking will be an essential component, but how and what shape and form it takes, it's still a play which is very close to my heart. Okay, how much real can an actor be on stage? Now, very often I'm asked that everything that I do on stage is real, and yet I do not do realistic plays. If I cook food on the stage, it's real food. If I'm going to serve the audience, I can't serve them kacha khana. So the success of a play is also based on how tasty the food is that you cook. And the timing of the play has to also follow the timing of the cooking that is required. So the choreography and the precision is of a different kind altogether. Also, the fact is that sorry, I got a bit distracted by the question. The fact of the matter is that the actors had also got to be taught that when they eat and speak, they must have an understanding of their digestive system. So this play actually worked on many new ways of training the actor. How to eat and speak, how to play and cook. And what we also did, we want to show the transformation of the food. So there is kanak. The kanak is being cleaned. Then it goes into a chakki and it is being pounded. Then there's the atta. Water is poured and it is gunod. Then it is belod. Then it is cooked and then it is served. Which means it was not only the transformation of the character but also transformation of food. So it worked on many complex levels. The whole process of how we choreographed the play. I will give, my email is neelammansingh@yahoo.com. Okay. Now, even though the play Now I get the question. Even though the play is all about food and cooking, it is still dealing with the world of, it is not realistic. It is not within the space of realism. And this is a question I ask myself over and over again. That if I tell the actors, if you write a letter, you don't just scribble because you feel nobody is going to read it. You must write what you're supposed to write. Because the truth of the action will lead to the truth of the emotion. If you have to do pocha and you actually do the pocha properly, then somewhere your emotional graph will also become real. So the rice you eat on the stage, the rice and the dal you eat on the stage, or the chai that you make on the stage, it has to be made in real time, even though the context can be completely abstract and be surreal, as you call it. I don't know if I've come to answer your question. I think I'll wind up now. I've spoken enough and I'm sure you're quite bored. But I would like to also inform all of you that tomorrow there's a talk by Alok Chatterjee, who's also worked with me in Bharat Bhavan. And I'm sure it's going to be a very interesting talk. And then later there's a talk by Rohini Hattangadi. She was my senior at the National School of Drama and a wonderful, wonderful actor. And I'm sure this is a great bit of work that you all are doing, the Coconut Theatre. And I wish you all the best and thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to interact with all of you. Many, many thanks. Namaskar.